Some people go on dates to see if they like the person. Unfortunately, sometimes I think I go on dates to see if there's a good story in it.
Aesop's Fables, it's the tea, it's the show. Lessons in love with a fabulous glow.
Hello and welcome back to Aesop's Fables. Oh, it is so nice to be back. This is the little corner of the internet where we discuss all things gay and all things dating. I would discuss all things relationship, but honey, it's been a while. For long-time viewers, as you know, I typically tell a fable, a modern gay fable, with a moral and lessons, and we discuss the underlying psychology. But if you watched last week's video, linked in the description, you'd have seen that I am trying to decrease this psychology and reintroduce the romance. Sure, the psychology is implied, but I'm turning back to literature for inspiration. Inspiration about where I keep going wrong. We talked about Shakespearean fatal flaws. These are not the character flaws that are resolved by the end. These are the fatal flaws that get the protagonist killed. I suggested some of us, me, maybe others, might have a similar flaw when it comes to dating. I was very brave. And I revealed my fatal flaw in dating, that I have a tendency to make romantic connection the basis of my self-worth. I've improved over the years, I think, but old habits die hard. I'm here to go deep, to recount my dating history and to work out where I have gone wrong. Join me, if you dare. It was early winter 2024. The Eras Tour was in full swing. The Glasgow Willy Wonka experience was about to take the world by storm. What a time. I was about to meet a fellow Australian. I actually can't remember how we met, but it would have been one of the Tinder, Hinge, Grindr combos. We chatted, we swapped numbers, we WhatsApped. It was a tale as old as time. He was a lawyer, from memory, with big cuddle arms, a big wide smile. He had a very established life, and I quickly got the impression that he wanted someone to slot into it. Another key detail I should probably mention is that we have some medical history in common. I won't go into too much detail, but as a summary, I survived a disease that his partner didn't. I remember texting a friend and highlighting the wonderful narrative behind this meeting. My fatal flaw was already kicking in at this point, as I started to confuse a story with intimacy, the narrative with connection. But let's not jump ahead too far, gentle viewers. We met for the first time outside the Dean Street Elizabeth line entrance in Soho. You know the one. Almost immediately, his hand was on the back of my neck. "You're even more beautiful in person," he said, which sounds nice. But it was so immediate that I actually froze up and was speechless. This is rare. I smiled and said thank you, and we kept walking. It was a lot. This a lot continued. We had a coffee at Little Ballon's, and he went to hold my hand as I was speaking. He got the waiter to take a photo of us. I think I probably still have it. I'm not sharing it, obviously. He started sliding lower and lower in his chair to a point that our legs were touching. Classic me, I looked at him and asked him if his back was okay, causing him to recoil into an upright position. Apparently he had been trying to be intimate, and I had ruined it. I felt bad, so I reassured him that it was more than okay. I was just confused. We went to watch Sunday evening drag at the Admiral Duncan, and on the walk up Old Compton Street, he stopped me, and we started kissing for the first time. It was a lot for a Sunday, but it was the kind of a lot that This continued to the point that we were told off by the drag queen for making out during her performance. Another part of my fatal flaw arises, mistaking physical connection for emotional intimacy. If the kissing is good, I can fake intimacy with the best of them. A few days later, we met again. We walked along the South Bank. I'd had a choir rehearsal, and I think he'd had a language lesson from memory. And I really appreciated that he was okay with meeting just for half an hour or an hour on a Tuesday evening, 8:30 p.m. instead of having to book out a whole date. I'm sure it's the same everywhere, but in London it's, I'm not free for the next 2.5 weeks, but I can fit you in on Thursday the 16th for, a coffee. So I appreciated that level of spontaneity a bit. I got us hot chocolates from Waterloo Station, and then we walked along. We sipped, we walked. I thought this was a good chance to try and get to know him, since I had spent most of the first date either being confused about the level of intimacy or fully embracing it. Whoopsie. I asked him questions about his life. I can't remember the specific topics, but I remember making a vested interest to go a little bit deeper and to feel a bit more known and like I know him. I was probably over course correcting from our first date, so I'll hold my hand up for that one. But every time I said something about my life or the world, he responded with a compliment. I'd say, I don't know, I'm worried about the rise of the right in the UK and how that will affect my immigration. And he'd stare at me and say, "You're so handsome." It progressed to me answering one of his questions and him stopping and kissing me mid-sentence. "I couldn't resist," he said. Which sounds romantic, but if you know me, not interrupting me is the most romantic thing in the world. He was also very future-focused, constantly planning it. We could travel there together, we could move in together. At one point, I mentioned that my favourite time in London was when I was in my little flat down on the canal in Angel, and he said, he could sell his house and we could move in together there. This was date 2. I'm not that blind. I did feel uncomfortable at the time, but I did succumb a little bit to the fantasy. This promise of security, emotional safety, which I know by now has to be earned, needs to be earned, to be built together. Dynamically, simultaneously, complementarily. The next step was a sleepover. He had bought food for dinner and it was my job to bring ice cream for dessert, and I plain forgot. I was stressed at work. It was quite stressful getting to his place with connections from Soho after work. It's not an excuse. It's very unlike me to forget something like that because I'm normally a bit of a pleaser when it comes to those sorts of dates. So something was either up, I was either really stressed, but poor form on my part completely, because he was doing me a big favour and cooking dinner and taking on that responsibility, so I'll, again, hold my hand up. It's possible my subconscious knew something before my conscious caught up. That reality was starting to peek through the clouds of the story. I found myself strangely irritable. Well, maybe not that strange. At the time it was strange, I've now gotten used to it. The intimacy felt forced, and I didn't think that. I felt it in my body, and it came out. One thing I probably need to mention as well is during the week between the South Bank date and coming over to his house, he kept sending me photos of him and a cat. His neighbour's cat, apparently. I'd get these photos saying, "Good night, handsome," from me and Kevin, with a selfie of this cat, his neighbour's cat. And slowly I realized, I don't think this is his neighbour's cat. It might have started as his neighbour's cat, but it had food, a bowl, and slept in his bed. I think this is your cat. I should also mention at this point that Kevin the cat had 3 legs. He was missing one of his back legs. I'll paint you a picture of this little happy family. At one point, my date was sprawled out on the sofa, and Kevin was asleep on his tummy, and he motioned to this side part and said, "This is your spot here." This unfortunately activated my worst impulse. Dark humor to get through discomfort. It started small. I was in the kitchen and Kevin came through the cat door. I yelled out, "Oh no, he left one of his legs outside." After dinner, my date wanted to show me HBO's Chernobyl. I don't know if you've seen it. We watched the first episode, and one of the very first scenes just after the meltdown features a cat. Full frame cat. And with a fully earnest face, I said, "Wow, the radiation caused mutations so quickly." "What do you mean?" he said. "Well, that cat has 4 legs." It was an uncomfortable evening. My irritability did not get better. I slept badly. I was rather stressy in the morning. I'm sure I was very unpleasant to be around. The vibe was off, let's just say that. Packed up my bags, I was meeting my friend visiting from Germany in Hackney, and I was preparing to leave. I stepped through the front door when my date said, "You know, Kevin will be very angry about the things that you said about him." And without thinking, I said, "Oh yeah? Will he be hopping mad?" I closed the door and walked into my single future. Looking back, I think I was already halfway inside a story before we'd even met. Not the one that was actually unfolding across the table, but the one that I had started writing in my head. The shared accent, the shared upbringing, the shared tragedy of a disease that I survived and that his partner didn't. The closure, the emotional closure that brought, the narrative gold. The promise of security and safety. This is Romeo Montague deciding the meaning of the story the moment he saw Juliet across the room. Or like Amélie Poulain, spotting patterns and signs and little hints of destiny everywhere she looks. For a while, I let myself believe in that version of the evening. But my big question, gentle viewers, do we think this escape into narrative to be fatal? Well, while I was busy romanticizing the moment, building a whole story out of a handful of details, my body seemed less interested in this narrative I was writing. It reacted before I could explain why. Small resistance, a flash of anger, a hesitation, which I suppose is reassuring in its own way. Even if my emotional instincts are getting carried away by the story, at least some part of me is still paying attention to the scene itself. Oh, gentle viewers, self-advocacy is messy. Sometimes it starts unconscious, unskillful, but hopefully we can get there together. And if in doubt, you can always bully a three-legged cat. Join me next week when we dive into another dating mess of my own creation, part creation. Like if you feel like it, subscribe if you haven't, and I would love to hear your thoughts and similar experiences in the comments. Take care, you fabulous fantasists.
Days of fables, it's the tea, it's the show. Lessons in love with a fabulous glow.